getting ready for Trump's tariffs while politicians fight over Team Canada's lineup. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The top news stories
and conversations that matter to you.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Trump's tariff threat and the Liberal leadership race. Those were the two big issues in Canadian politics this week, and they will be for the foreseeable future. Donald Trump will be sworn in on Monday and start his second term as president of the United States, and he has promised to impose an across-the-board 25% tariff on Canadian exports to the United States. Most of the premiers and Prime Minister Trudeau say they're playing for Team Canada, putting up a united front. But Alberta Premier Danielle Smith doesn't want to be part of the lineup. She's opposed to the Trudeau government's decision not to rule out using Alberta's oil and gas exports as leverage in a trade war. That led to Prime Minister Trudeau launching into a tirade yesterday against Premier Smith, saying she's not putting Canada first.
I don't blame Danielle Smith for speaking up for her. That's part of her job. But every single premier other than Danielle Smith then chose to put Canada first and say, but we're all part of Team Canada because what happens to any part of us happens to all of us, and we will be there to respond strongly, to fight for Canada, and to do it in a united way that makes sure that it's fair across all industries, across all regions. That was what we came together yesterday to do.
Mr. Trudeau then went on to portray his government as a government that has been good for Alberta.
I would actually like to point out to Danielle Smith that Canadians know the importance of standing up for each other. That's why Canadian taxpayers bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX, to be able to get Albertan oil to new markets. That was an investment that all Canadians made, that the Alberta government is making billions of dollars off of, because in what was a very difficult decision, the federal government, we made the decision to purchase and build and complete that pipeline. That's an example of all Canadians standing up for Alberta and getting it done. So yes, premiers should be advocating for their own industries, their own country, their own communities, but they should also put their country first, as every single premier except Danielle Smith did.
In a social media posting, Premier Smith mocked Trudeau's so-called Team Canada approach, saying, quote, "It's time to officially close the door on the Trudeau, Freeland, Carney Liberals." The looming threat of tariffs is also a talking point for the man who wants to replace Justin Trudeau as the leader of the Liberal Party and become the next Prime Minister of Canada. Former central banker Mark Carney was in Alberta yesterday. He was in Edmonton to officially kick off his leadership campaign. And he suggested he would be better at negotiating with Donald Trump than the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Premier Danielle Smith.
In the coming days and weeks, I'll propose some big changes and some bold new ideas. And I understand, that's not how politics is done these days, when lifelong politicians rely on slogans and slander and sound bites. But once again, these are not ordinary times. Let me tell you one other thing. In these times, sending Pierre Poilievre to negotiate with Donald Trump is the worst possible idea. I can think of one other politician I might not send. It just came to me in the last 24 hours.
While Carney was launching his campaign in Edmonton, the Conservatives were wasting no time in launching a new attack ad with Mark Carney as the target. Remember, he's carbon tax Carney.
Mark Carney is back from Europe.
Speaking as a European,
to continue what Justin Trudeau started.
A steady increase in the price of carbon. Carbon prices have been applied sparingly. They've been set far too low.
He even called Trudeau's carbon tax a model for others. So no matter what he calls it,
effectively a shadow carbon price.
Or price on pollution
you're going to keep paying.
in some form of carbon tax.
Carbon tax Carney. He's just like Justin.
You sneaky.
And Canadian politicians are also popping up on American cable news outlets. The latest to do so, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly on CNN, accusing Donald Trump of starting a trade war.
If Trump is going ahead with tariffs, he's starting a trade war. And of course we will retaliate. And you know what will happen for all those watching us right now? This will be a Trump tariff tax on Americans, because this will have an impact on jobs in many, many states. 35 states have Canada as the main export market. And at the same time, we know that we can do a lot to make sure that ultimately at the grocery store, at the pump, when it comes to heating costs, we can try to make sure that things are not as costly. But if we have 25% tariffs against us, of course we will retaliate. And of course that will translate into a tax on Americans.
Can you describe in any greater detail exactly how Canada would retaliate?
Listen, we still want to make sure that we get to a deal without any tariffs. We think we can get there. We have the USMCA, which was, according to President Trump himself, the best deal ever signed by the American administration. We believe it was a win-win. We believe that we're able to create jobs together. And we know that we have to continue to fight inflation. At the same time, we will continue to make sure that we fight back if there's a threat, and everything is on the table.
According to news reports, the Trudeau government will unveil an initial round of retaliatory tariffs on Monday, but only if Trump announces tariffs on Canada that day. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Here with our expert in communications, crisis communications, political communications, Barry McLoughlin is the president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants. Barry lectures at the Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa and at the MBA program at the Shannon School of Business at Cape Breton University. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Rob. Great to be here.
How would you grade Mark Carney's week?
Well, it wasn't a launch speech that you would normally expect. You know, he had a crowd there. He was in Edmonton. Had all the makings of it. And it was a very flat kind of delivery and a very kind of muted, somewhat downbeat tone of message. So I found it a little surprising. And he kind of read most of the speech. Again, that kind of amazed me because I've actually seen him speak, you know, without notes. And I thought, well, this will be the time to do that, you know. But I think he's making a transition, you know, from being an economist and so on into, wow, you are wanting to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, you know. And I've seen Justin Trudeau, you know, lift the roof with his kind of speech, same with Pierre Poilievre. They're both extremely good at that. And he's got to up his game. I know he's just getting started, but he's got to up his game pretty quickly.
Yeah. We have a little bit of his opening remarks. I thought it was kind of dull, actually, and boring. I would note it had no social media following. At one point, it had like 60 followers on Facebook Live. But also, what kind of message is this? Like, is this really part of your sales pitch to voters, to liberal voters, or people who might be curious about voting for Mark Carney? Let's listen to a little bit of this.
Those good old times, my friends, are over. Our times are anything but ordinary. The system, it's not working as it should. And it's not working as it could. People are anxious. No wonder. Too many are falling behind. Too many young people can't afford a home. Too many people can't find a doctor.
Yeah, and and I don't know. It was kind of strange to me that it's just where's the passion, where's the hope, where's the plan,
Right.
where's the fire in the belly? There was none of that, Barry.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, all of that should have been the subordinate clause. We need, instead of despair, we need hope. Instead of, boom, you have to end each line with the positive, yes, applause maker, yes, the hopeful message. And it did not at all. It showed up every once in a while, but didn't really permeate the speech. So he was very fixated on Pierre Poilievre. My goodness, gave him a lot of airtime, right? And I, realize he has to position himself against him. But you notice, but really, it still has to be about what he would do as prime minister. How would he be any different? And we didn't see that. I noticed, of course, he didn't mention Justin Trudeau by name. The Trudeau government. I found that a bit funny because really, he's still the prime minister of Canada, and I know there's one thing to distance yourself, but it's another thing to pretend he doesn't exist. I think that's a different kind of strategy.
Okay, let's listen to the latest attack ad from the Conservatives with Mark Carney being the target. Roll tape, David.
Mark Carney is back from Europe
And speaking as a European,
to continue what Justin Trudeau started.
A steady increase in the price of carbon. Carbon prices have been applied sparingly. They've been set far too low.
He even called Trudeau's carbon tax a model for others. So no matter what he calls it,
Effectively a shadow carbon price.
Or price on pollution
you're going to keep paying.
in some form of carbon tax.
Carbon tax Carney. He's just like Justin.
You sneaky.
He didn't come back for you. He didn't come back for you. A little bit there. Speaking as a European, what do you think of it?
Well, of course, everything exists forever nowadays. So everything he's ever said that would indicate, this kind of positioning on tax, carbon tax, is going to come back to haunt him. That's why I thought he needed in that speech a clear dividing line. Even if he said on April 1st, I will cancel that planned increase, like do something tangible. Not we'll be looking at it. We'll be ultimately finding ways to replay. So that goes into, Never Neverland. Right. So I was amazed he didn't have a definitive, clear message on the number one issue Canadians say they're angry, annoyed about, and will act upon.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Barry, I mean, the Conservatives have been a fundraising machine, especially since Poilievre won the leadership. They have a lot of money to spend on ads like that. And one of the keys in politics, and you've said this before, you have to define yourself before your opponent has a chance to define you. And the Conservatives are going to really go after Mark Carney and try to define him for Canadians before he has a chance to define himself.
Right. And I think this was his first, okay, we'll give him a bit of a break here, but he's only got such a limited number of days. This is one of those things where he has to hit the ground running, not sort of gradually ramp up. So I was hoping for that, but I've seen him differently. I've seen him with much more energy, but we're not seeing it there. And maybe he was just being overly concerned and nervous about it, whatever, I don't know. But he's got to really change that delivery because I've actually seen him ramp it up more than that. And he's got a ways to go yet.
Okay. So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this Liberal leadership race. Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, both promising to cancel the carbon tax. How do you backtrack on something you've defended for 6 years? And Barry has been in Washington for not one, but two inaugural ceremonies. So we'll ask him what that experience is like. What's it like to be in Washington on Inauguration Day? That's Monday in the United States, of course. When we come back, this is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Back with Barry McLoughlin, the president of TLC Transformational Leadership Consultants. The carbon tax in Canada has been around since 2019. That's 6 years, and both Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland have defended it every step of the way. And now they're both promising to cancel the carbon tax if they win this leadership and become the prime minister. How do you backtrack on something that you've defended for 6 years, Barry?
Well, Chrystia Freeland in particular would have real trouble with that. In fact, with the whole Trudeau agenda. She was, as the Prime Minister himself said, she was right. They were right beside each other throughout all this. So it's hard for her to distance herself, even though she threw that hand grenade at him when she left the door. But coming back to Mark Carney, I mean, he said right to my face at a public meeting that we don't need the carbon tax to meet climate change goals for Canada. Boom. Well, tell Canadians that. Be frank about it. He said he will sort of remove it, and that's part of it. He will. He has ideas, but nevertheless, we didn't get any definitive commitment there. And I'm surprised because he actually, compared to her, he actually could give some distance on that. So it always creates this awkward, I know we were there, but I'm just saying that it makes it very difficult to claim that you're the agent of change when Canadians, over 3/4 of Canadians, want change. Yeah. So I think that they've got to really, tighten up, toughen up, and be clear. Yeah, and they're going to take hits for you said one thing, now you're saying another, and that's really one of their challenges. There's no question about it.
Yeah, that is going to be a challenge for them to overcome. We have about 2 minutes left here. So you have attended 2 inauguration ceremonies. I just want to get a sense, like when you're in Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day, like what is that like? Is the city pretty much shut down? I mean, what is it like on Inauguration?
Oh my God, yeah. We were at the Obama's first and second inauguration. Okay, so the first one was unbelievable, but the equally had huge crowds. There were 2 million people on the mall on the inauguration day for Barack Obama, and you have to get up crack of dawn. You try to get to the metro; it's totally jammed, it's shut down. They can't go out. All the metro lines shut down because there was just too many people. It just took forever. Eventually, got a taxis miraculously got near there. Go through security. Now they did security to get to the mall, which had never been done before. Finally, get in there, a massive crowd. People were obviously for the 2009 inauguration for Obama. This was seen as just like the second coming. This had whole huge emotional reactions everywhere, and we were very fortunate because yes, we attended the parade and so on, and then we were already volunteering on the campaign and volunteering on the inauguration. So what happened was when we came to the pre-inauguration, just after the ceremony, you have to go to this church basement just off the mall, and you go in there, and there's 200 fellow volunteers there, and they select. He looked right at me and Lauren. He said, "You two, I want you to do the VIP welcome at the official inauguration ball." So we go over.
That must have been cool. Yeah.
It was amazing, and so we welcomed everybody from Denzel Washington to Beyonce to Oprah, all of them, and governors and senators. It was a huge, a very special, once-in-a-lifetime experience. And we're just to give you an idea of it, we're getting our photo. We want to get our photos taken in front of the room. And so along came an older African-American woman, and she said, "Do you want me to take your photo for you?" And we go, "Yeah, sure. Thank you." She guides us. She said, "Oh, stand a little more. Barack would prefer if you get over a little more." Finally, I leaned over to Laura and I said, "Well, who is she?" She said, "That's Michelle Obama's mother." So,
very cool.
Mrs. Robinson took our photo. But it was just an amazing experience. And it was really, I'd say, an almost, social revolution. It was huge, the reactions. And I think,
that's our time, Barry. But we'll see what it's going to be like on Monday.
Right.
And of course, for Canadians, what comes after Monday is the great unknown.
Yeah. That's right.
We'll speak next week.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Barry McLoughlin from TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, he's been minding Ottawa's business. Tom Korski is back with us. He's the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. Welcome back.
Thank you, Rob.
Well, people are not going to like to hear this. Some people are not going to like to hear this. But how much money will refugees from Gaza qualify for in grants from the Department of Immigration?
On arrival in Canada, $3,000 tax-free per adult and $1,500 per minor child, no cap per family. I think it would be universal opposition to this, Rob, based on the government's own internal polling on foreign aid programs. Whenever the government asks Canadians, "Hey, what do you think about foreign aid?" people say, "I like it as a concept. It seems like the right thing to do." And as soon as you say, okay, well, here's the bill, that's it. Then they back out of the room. And these grants are equivalent to the sums that were paid to Ukrainian war refugees, in addition to free schooling for the kids, 90 days worth of free health care, assistance with housing, free language training. That Ukrainian refugee program, over $750 million was the charge to taxpayers. The feds will not cost out the Gaza relief program.
Yeah, because they don't know how much it will cost in the end. I mean, they've already had 4,700 applications approved, but only 600, a little more than 600, have arrived. But now that there's a potential for a ceasefire, we shall see what happens. It's interesting that you mentioned foreign aid. I never used to get calls when I do open line, our open line segments on the radio. I never used to get calls about foreign aid, but just because of the social situation now in Canada with homeless encampments and food bank usage and everything, people are really questioning, our generosity around the world, I guess is one way to put it.
Oh, absolutely true. When Paul Martin went on the deficit cutting program, that on an epic scale in 1995, the least controversial thing he did was cut foreign aid by 21%. There was zero protests on Parliament Hill over that. And that's exactly the reason you just said, Rob. If you're a single mom working 2 jobs at the Walmart in Portage la Prairie, you're saying, man, I could use $3,000 tax-free right now plus $1,500 per minor child. That's the problem.
Sure. Yeah. The Parliamentary Budget Officer is out with a new report. It's looking at IT contracting and what that's costing the government. How much are IT contractors billing the government, say, compared to if the same work was done by the public service?
According to the Budget Office, Rob, it's typically 25% more. And they can't find out any reason why. Analysts were directed to delve into this by the Commons Government Operations Committee. This is part of the backwash of the famous ArriveCAN program, where the costs were just insane. They were crazy, and there were RCMP raiding the office of the lead contractor on charges of fraudulent billing. So the MPs asked the Budget Office to get to the bottom of it, so they did. They looked at the heaviest users of Internet technology contractors, external private sector contractors. Typical charges were up to $1,000 a day, and the typical overcharge was 25%. Rob, this is the problem that MPs are struggling with. This cabinet has hired 110,000 more public servants. At the same time, they're spending more than $20 billion a year on consultants.
Contracting.
It makes no sense. And the Budget Office itself says they could find how did they put it? The Budget Office is unable to determine the underlying reason for these premiums or whether they're justified, end of quote. Wow. Like that. That's a wow.
Right. But sole source contractors, IT consultants, are billing the government about $1,000 a day when they say they're doing their jobs, right? Yeah, that's crazy. Holy cow, $1,000 a day. Good work if you can get it, I suppose.
In this audit, the Canada Border Services Agency, remember them? They're the ones who gave us ArriveCAN. They would not even supply documentation to the Budget Office. The Budget Office hectored and cajoled them for documents. Who are you hiring? How much are you paying them? What's the per diem, the per diem rate? And the CBSA would not answer. No accountability.
Okay. There is a contender. I would consider him to be a dark horse in the Liberal leadership. Actually, the Liberal leadership race, the first to declare was a business person by the name of Frank Baylis. Now, a lot of people don't know Frank Baylis, but he was once a Liberal MP for one term, Pierrefonds Dollard, Quebec. But you and I have talked about Frank Baylis in the past because his medical company did very well during the pandemic when money was being shoveled out the door for ventilators. Remind us a little bit about Frank Baylis.
Well, Frank Baylis is a real riches to riches story. I love everything about his story. Right. Frank Baylis inherited a medical supply company in Montreal called Baylis Medical. And he had served his one term as a Liberal MP, as you mentioned, and had been on the Commons Industry Committee, and I guess he got to know some people. We don't really know. And then the pandemic hit. And Frank Baylis, he testified in committee. He was right up against it. They were taking out second mortgages on a factory. He was paying himself nothing. They were having to cut benefits, desperate to avoid layoffs. And then something nice happened. Baylis Medical got a sole source contract for 100,000 Baylis brand ventilators. Problem, they'd never made a ventilator before, and they didn't even have certification from the Department of Health to make a ventilator medical device, but he got the contract anyway. You know the epilogue? Frank Baylis sold his company to U.S. investors for over $1 billion after the pandemic was over. Yes. Whatever happened, whatever tragedy the pandemic represented for so many families in our country, it was one of the best things that ever happened to Frank Baylis.
Oh, yes, yes. The value of the contract has always been eye-popping to me, and now with hindsight, is even more eye-popping now. This was for 10,000 ventilators. It was $237,300,000. That was the contract. $237 million. Can you imagine? $23,000 for a ventilator that at the time were typically selling for maybe the most $5,000 a piece.
Tops. Oh, yeah. And do you know what happened to the machines, Rob? This is one of my... There's so many aspects to the Frank story. Yes. Every single one of them went into a warehouse in the Ottawa Valley, except some that were given to Ukraine as war aid, and they tried to ship 700 to India. Problem, they didn't know that India operates on a different electrical plug, so they had to send over $13 converters. Right. It's like Lucy and Ethel were running the public health agency, but Frank came up smiling. Oh, he was smiling.
Yes, he did very well. He did very well. Sold his company to Boston Scientific a few years later. Look, the ethics commissioner looked into all of this. I should note this contract, $237 million contract. Not long after he had left public office and said there is nothing to see here and no ethical rules were breached, according to Mario Dion, who was the ethics commissioner at the time. Okay, we'll be right back with Tom Korski, the managing editor of Blacklock's Reporter. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Tom Korski from Blacklock's Reporter with us every Friday. I would like to pick your brain. Now, the Parliament is prorogued in what is funded and what is not funded. The government has been under pressure to beef up the border as one of Donald Trump's demands in order to try and avoid the tariffs that could be coming as soon as next week. Now, in its fall economic statement, it committed to spending $1.3 billion. Now, I would note that's over 6 years, so it's about $216 million a year to beef up the border. Now, news reports at the time said $81 million would be spent, quote, before the end of March. But now Parliament is prorogued. And the government can't spend $1 unless the Parliament says it can spend that dollar. And Parliament is prorogued, so all kinds of spending is in limbo. So I'm just wondering, Tom, what you know about this. Is this funding even approved?
On the 80 plus that you mentioned, Rob, in the context of the $500 billion federal budget, it's unbelievable, but that is the size of the federal budget these days, $500 billion. They can find that kind of money through interdepartment transfer or even lapsed funding. That part wouldn't be hard. $83, $85 million is not too difficult. But as you correctly point out, anytime you hear any federal government say, we're going to have this is going to be a 10-year, gazillion-dollar program, sadly, the world doesn't work that way. They cannot bind future parliaments to their spending. And every dollar each fiscal year must be voted by Parliament, every single dollar. And the budget year, as you mentioned, at 11:59 p.m. on Monday, the 31st of March, is all over. The next month's payroll alone is $6 billion. Where will the money come from? I don't think Cabinet thought this through. But these pie-in-the-sky figures they use, and that's gone on for years. That goes back 30, 40 years. Let's use 5-year funding that is not funded and that will probably never be funded, but it gets an attention-grabbing figure.
Mm-hmm. So the $1.3 billion over 6 years on border security, okay, that's a nice attention-grabbing headline, but in the current political context, really meaningless. What actually might be spent in the short term being now until the end of March, might be something closer to 80 million, right? 80, 85 million, something like that.
That's exactly right.
Right. Okay.
Which in the context of, the Canada Border Services Agency, I'm sorry, it's a staggering figure, but it is chump change by these people's standards.
Yes. Right. Yes. Now, it was this time last week that you were actually breaking the news with us that the government has suspended the $5,000 federal rebate on electric vehicles. What's been the reaction to that from industry?
They're absolutely furious. Dealers and manufacturers alike, their lobbyists, were enraged and said so. And they came up to Parliament Hill and they said, your mandate is finished. That's it. There is no way, one executive called it a fantasy mandate. This is the mandate that says starting next year, 1/5 of all new car sales must be electric, and then it rises incrementally so that by the end of a decade, you will not be allowed to buy a new gas-powered car, even if you want one in Canada. That's the theory. But then when Cabinet withdrew those $5,000 rebates, the dealers and manufacturers alike, their lobbyists said, look, it's over. Here's a signature program with the billions to build the battery plants, and it was going to be great, and the emissions are going to drop. It's over. An entire federal climate program has died with a whimper.
Yeah, very strange. And didn't that catch you off guard, Tom, that they did that?
I was staggered by that. And we spoke to one of the lobbyists for the electric industry, and he said we had a back and forth with the Department of Finance, and we were looking at various ways where they could perpetuate these rebates, maybe make them less for millionaires buying Teslas, kind of spread the wealth a little bit to cover the cost gap on electrics, which is typically, according to the Budget Office, 30%. It is more expensive to buy electric. Every car buyer knows this.
Sure, yeah.
All these guys. And they thought they had a friend in Steve Guilbeault, the Minister of Environment. Where's Guilbeault this week? Not one word.
No,
I guess
not one word.
He went into hiding. It's over.
Bad week for Stephen Guilbeault. The EV rebates are gone, and you have the two leading contenders for the leadership saying the carbon tax is going to come to an end too. So, yeah, bad week for him. All right. Thank you, Tom Korski. Good week for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye. The managing editor at Blacklock's reporter minding Ottawa's business. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Well, David, we made it.
We did?
Another busy week around here. Right?
I'm not sure if I made it. I'm feeling it this week.
What do you mean?
These are troubling times, Rob.
What do you mean they're troubling times? Don't sweat the small stuff, David.
Deeply troubled by all of this tariff business. It feels like
tariff anxiety.
It feels like we just avoided the post-COVID recession just in time for the Trump tariff recession. It's like from recession threat to recession threat. It's all too much.
Well, it's very interesting that you would say that, because I think there's this I think something's up, David. And I want to ask the listeners about this during the Talkback today, which is coming up right after the news. It is the Friday free-for-all, so we're wide open on topics. But Wab Kinew, the Manitoba Premier, was the first to kind of hint at this, that one of the things the premiers and the Prime Minister were going to talk about this week, bringing back pandemic relief programs if the economy really suffers because of Trump's tariffs. So bringing back things like CERB. You remember CERB? Of course you do, right?
yes.
$2,000 a month, right? CEBA loan programs, the wage subsidy program. And then you have Chrystia Freeland has an opinion piece in the Toronto Star, kind of launching her campaign in the pages of the Toronto Star today, saying counter tariffs would bring all kinds of money into the treasury in Ottawa, and we could give every Canadian earning less than $150,000 $2,700 and still have half the money left. And then Melanie Joly was asked about that at a news conference today, and she said, yeah, we'll take the money from the counter tariffs and we'll use it to support Canadians and Canadian businesses to kind of weather the storm. That's one of the things we're going to, I hope, to talk about with the listeners today, whether they think it would be wise to resurrect programs like, say, the CERB program, if there's serious economic harm from the Trump tariffs. Now, with Tom Korski, we were talking about the surprising move by the government to end this, what is another signature program for them, EVs. They love EVs. Look at the money they're pouring into EV factories and, EV sales mandates and everything. And all of a sudden, they unplugged the $5,000 federal rebate. And it kind of, I think, caught a lot of people off guard. You've been doing work for the Big Story podcast, and you've been speaking to people who are going to be impacted by that. What are they telling you?
Well, the industry at all levels, from dealerships up to the manufacturers, are really feeling like they are completely in the lurch now, following the end of that subsidy program. Because starting next year, in 2026, there's supposed to be a sales mandate. Right. There's regulations on the books that will require dealerships to sell a certain percentage of electric vehicles starting next year. But now that that federal subsidy program has no money left in it, the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association president and CEO, Brian Kingston, who's my guest on the Big Story podcast tomorrow, told me flat out, there is no way dealerships will be able to comply with those regulations without restricting the sale of gas-powered cars if that subsidy program doesn't come back. So they either need the subsidy program back or the mandate scrapped. The government isn't speaking to them, and Parliament is prorogued. It's
right.
Total chaos.
It's got to be one or the other. Yeah,
it's total
crazy.
Chaos.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy, isn't it? Yeah, very interesting. All right, Talkback Friday free for all right after the latest breaking news coming up next. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's always 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today, though, it's the Friday free-for-all, and that's our favorite day of the week around here because we don't come up with the topics. You come up with the topics. What's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about something that's been in the news? There's certainly been a lot of news. You want to talk about something you think should be in the news? We're certainly open to that. Whatever it happens to be, you take the lead and we'll follow along. And the number to call, 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that to our call screener, and we will make your call a priority. Great to see that some people have called already, so let's get things going here. Sean in Halifax, you're up first, Sean. Hi there, Sean.
Hey, Rob. Rob, first, I want to talk about Carney's little announcement there yesterday. But first, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in first about what do you think about the CERB stuff. Why don't we just skip it and go right to UBIs right away? Why don't we just skip all that and go right into universal basic income? Because that's where they're trying to take us. I mean, it's very clear to me. So that's all I got on that. But now here's the thing, Rob, that blew my mind yesterday when Mark Carney was doing his announcement. I was under the impression he was going to Edmonton to announce it because that was the riding he was going to run in. But turned out I was sadly mistaken, and he doesn't even know which riding he's going to represent. So to me, I find Liberals' democracy, save democracy, and we stand for democracy, a little thrown off because correct me if I'm wrong, but Mark Carney stands to be the first Canadian Prime Minister who is British, Irish, Canadian citizen, and an unelected bureaucrat. Right? So how does democracy work if he gets to become essentially the Prime Minister, whether that be for a couple months or what I think, October 28th, I think that's what's going to happen. Jagmeet Singh's not going to vote no confidence. And we're going to have a Prime Minister who gets to be picked as the leader of the Liberal Party, so he'll be acting Prime Minister, and then he gets to see where his most support comes out of. So say if it comes out as safe, he got more support coming out of Nova Scotia. What's he going to come down here and run in one of our ridings?
I think he'd ride in. I think he's going to try and find an Ottawa riding myself. He has roots in Ottawa. He's been an Ottawa Mandarin, and the Ottawa, like the city area, is very friendly to the Liberals. Liberals can be deeply unpopular everywhere in the country. They'll still win seats in Ottawa. So,
but does that not defeat democracy?
Well, it's happened before. It's happened before. It's just kind of a quirk of the system. Yeah, John Turner.
Okay. I didn't know actually that was. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, John Turner. The first time. John Turner, when he replaced Trudeau, I gather that, and I'm kind of learning this too because I was pretty young when all of this happened, of course. But apparently, John Turner attended the House of Commons and he was sitting in the gallery. So it's happened before. Yeah, it has happened before several times.
It was a little slap to democracy to be able to just run for prime minister and then get to pick where you think you're going to actually win.
Yeah, because I think the right and proper thing to do, not that he would do this, I think the right and proper thing to do is he wins the leadership, he becomes prime minister, and then he should go to the governor general and say, I'm going to go seek a mandate now, and the election should be underway, and he should seek a mandate from the people.
So what happens, Rob, say he does win the leadership election, and he does that and goes into a riding and loses that riding? What happens in that situation?
Yeah, I don't think that would matter as long as the Liberals and the could find a dance partner in the House and maintain the confidence of the House.
Crazy
party.
To me.
I think so, but I would again. I am not an expert in parliamentary affairs, but I might have to check in with an expert on that. But I think that's what would happen. I think that's what.
Yeah, it just boggles my mind. Anyway, thanks, Rob. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, these are strange times, Sean, and I appreciate your call. Yeah, great to hear from you today. Let's stay in Halifax and talk to Dave. Hi, Dave. You're on the air. What's on your mind today, Dave?
Hi, Rob. Did you not get your invite to Trump's inauguration?
I did not. No, not on the invitation list for that. Okay.
And I think it's been moved indoors, from my understanding, because of the freezing
temperatures. It has been. Yeah. Kind of cold down there, I guess.
It came through New York Times. So, listen, I want to talk about Danielle Smith, and I'm not too sure about her decision. I don't want to get into that, but she's the Iron Lady of Canada. Be honest with you, in my opinion, she's she's a very strong-willed person, and as a woman, people should be proud of her, women especially, because I think she's got something happening there. She's got some charisma. She's got strength, as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, my own opinion. But I also want to touch on something else here as we sort of focus on the attention to the tariffs and what have you. Folks should be aware that Trudeau and our government, we voted him in, has committed $400 million and probably more than that to Haiti. And
it's way more than that. Yeah, since the earthquake, it's way more than that.
Yeah, that's right. I think 2010, maybe $2 billion, to be honest with you. But that's not all his. But he's contributed a lot of money, or committed a lot of money to Haiti for its security and its democracy. And what have we got out of that? And where is Haiti right now? It's a mess. And of course, when we have Haiti refugees here as well, which we're paying dearly for as well. And God bless us, and God bless them. But Haiti is a lost cause, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sorry, it is. It's just not evolving whatsoever. It's always had complications with government and takeovers, and unfortunately, nature has been harsh to Haiti as well. So I just wanted to bring that out, folks. I mean, if you're talking to, maybe Trump's looking at all this money that's going to waste, in his opinion, and thinking, well, wait a minute here. If you guys have that kind of luxury, and, my mother used to always say, charity begins at home. And in Halifax here, there's 2 villages, I guess, or encampments that have just opened up pallet homes at $30,000 a piece. We're talking millions here in certain parts of Halifax that are for the homeless. And like I said, charity begins at home. This government is throwing money around left, right, and center to other countries and wars, and yet we're freaking out about the tariffs. So maybe Trump has a point. Maybe, hey, you guys got lots
I would
of money
just say, on Haiti, first of all, you have to understand the Canadian context. First of all, there's a large Haitian diaspora in Canada, particularly in Montreal, right? They speak French. They speak French, but there's a long history there. There's a long history there, sir. Okay.
There is indeed, and I'm not knocking Haiti
for many years,
Haiti.
But to your point, for many years, Haiti has been the top recipient of foreign aid from Canada, more than any other country in the world.
But I can believe it. Yes. And
I can tell you,
No.
But back in 2020, Foreign Affairs released a memo that said since 2010, so over that 10-year period, the Canadian government has spent $1.8 billion in Haiti.
Right. And where is Haiti today? Where is Haiti today?
Haiti today is a failed state. It is a failed state. Okay. Thank you for your call. I appreciate that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
thank you.
And
bye-bye.
God bless the Haitians and the country like that. So very good. Thank you, Rob.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Bye-bye. Okay. We'll be right back. We're just getting started. It is our Friday free-for-all Talkback Hour. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Open line, open topic. It's the Friday free-for-all. We'll follow your lead. Steve is in Calgary. Hi there, Steve.
They moved the inauguration indoors?
That's our understanding. Yes, sir.
Wow, I remember when Jimmy Carter got out of a limousine, walked up Pennsylvania Avenue, and Tip O'Neill was telling him, we won the election. We don't have to do this. But
okay.
That was a tougher generation, apparently. Hey, this is what always bothered me about the electric car.
Well, they say it's going to be cold. It's going to be cold. It's going to be -4.
It's always cold in January.
-4.
They play football in that weather.
I know, but it's what you're acclimatized to, I guess, Steve. It's what you're acclimatized to,
Yeah, Carter's from Georgia. He could handle heat. Wasn't built for the cold. Anyways, regarding the electric car, it's what always bothered me about these rebates. So I own an electric scooter, which I use downtown Calgary.
Okay.
He just comes into the building with you. I have a 2-stage electric snowblower, leaf blower, lawnmower. Okay? So I have the option of buying an electric-powered snowblower or a gas-powered. But here's the thing. You can't, there's no, that's not a tax deduction.
There's no rebate on that, yeah.
No, I don't want a rebate. I want a tax deduction because the way it works is simply this. Like Calgary has 500,000 lawns, okay? If my attitude is when the electric garden, home and garden stuff became viable, it works. It generally works for you. Not on a commercial level. They got to go 8 hours a day. But that's when they should have mandated you could no longer buy lawnmower. You have to buy electric. You can absolutely do that. But they want to get rid of the gas car, which is not really practical for everyone, but it's 100% practical for lawn and garden. So they kind of ignore those aspects of where you could go, especially on electric bicycles and scooters. I should have an absolute tax rebate. I got a neighbor, I live in Deep South. He rides his electric-powered bicycle downtown from the Deep South into the core. It costs him 9 cents in electricity every day. And the bottom line is he can do that 7 months a year. So this is practical. This is real-world stuff that works. Yet I cannot get any politician to move on garden tools and electric bicycles. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, very interesting. I have not been a big fan of EV rebates. I understand people. If they want to buy an electric car, they'll buy an electric car. Look, why are we giving people who can afford $60,000 electric cars $5,000? Why are we doing this? When we are expecting people on, say, disability payments and welfare, people who are relying on social assistance to get by on $10,000 and $11,000 for an entire year. We're going to send people, $5,000 check from the government because they bought an Audi Q4 e-tron. They're going to get $5,000 from the government. No. That never made a lot of sense to me. It wasn't a priority for me, but they're winding it down now anyway. So that is coming to an end. And some of the provincial rebate programs are coming to an end as well. We have to stop here. We'll be right back. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. It's the Friday free-for-all. Talkback. Love to hear from you today. We have a couple of lines available, and we'll follow your lead. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Michael in Cape Breton, you're on the Friday free-for-all. Talkback, Michael. Go ahead.
Rob, I think they're playing with our heads, Rob. How anybody, that provincial premier of Alberta can go down and take part in that inauguration by Trump. There's something wrong with her head. She needs a good kick in the backside.
Why is that?
He's a convicted felon. He's a rapist. He's a pathological liar.
Well, whether that's the case or not, he's also the president. He's also the president of the United States, who could do serious economic harm to this country, and maybe she has a chance to bend his ear for a while.
And he's going to bend nothing now. Fight fire with fire, and we can do it.
Fight fire with fire. Okay.
If you listen to that Jim Stanford explain, we don't owe the United States nothing. We have the resources here. They're just using all our resources for their manufacturing products and shipping them back here and selling them, shipping them all over the world. Cut the resources off them and start concentrating on retooling this country, and let's get independent of the United States and start dealing with other countries. It's as simple as that.
All right, Michael. Thank you. Yeah, Jim Stanford is a far left-wing labor economist. Sometimes I wonder if he's an economist at all, or is he an activist? It's hard to tell sometimes. Eric in Halifax. Thanks for calling, Eric. What's on your mind today?
The NFL playoffs, buddy.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah.
Okay,
Divisional
you know what sort of coincidence is? 7 of the remaining teams all won their division, with the exception of Washington, who had a respectable season. They were 12-5. So in the NFC, and I hope you're sitting down, I think Washington could upset Detroit.
Not a chance.
Okay, good enough. All right. What about the Ravens upsetting the Bills?
I think the Ravens will beat the Bills. I think the Ravens, right now, could win it all. I would say that. They are looking pretty good right now. Yeah.
Are you out of your tree? You're not about Kansas City and the Eagles.
No, I like the Ravens. I think the Ravens are the best team in football right now. I think I think it's going to come down to right now. This would be my pick right now, and we'll see how right I am next week. I think it's going to be Detroit against Baltimore. I think is.
Oh my God Almighty! Well, okay, you heard it here. The Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and the score will be 27-24 for Kansas City. And all the Swifters in North America, as we know it, they don't lose too much when she's in the stands.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Chiefs have looked pretty vulnerable at times this year. I know they've got a great record, but we'll see. We'll see. This is why they play the games. It's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the weekend, as I'm sure you are, Eric. Thanks for the call.
I'll be talking to you if you're...
we'll see how right we are. Yeah, we'll see how right we'll see it. Yeah, I think Baltimore's looking great. Okay, thank you. Jason in Kitchener up next. Jason. Hi, Jason. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Rob, I just want to talk a little bit about Mark Carney. I think it's, and I'm not a liberal, I'm not an NDP, I'm not a conservative, but, I think it's quite funny that those right-wing conservatives are losing their mind over a gentleman up until probably 2 weeks ago they had never heard of. Some people have to stop reading the National Post or the Toronto Sun or listen to what Pierre Poilievre is saying and actually become educated in who he is, what he has done, whether it was in Canada or in the UK. But yeah, it's crazy that people would rather listen to what other newspapers say, columnists say, as opposed to actually.
And he's obviously, very wedded to his principles. He told his friend John Iveson from the National Post, by the way, they are friends, had said that in the column in the National Post, that he's going to cancel the carbon tax. This guy has been promoting the carbon tax for as long as anyone can remember, and one of his main complaints about the carbon tax was that it wasn't high enough, sir.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. But my point, what I was trying to say, Rob, is that you have people who have never heard of the guy up until 2 weeks ago, just losing their mind, coming up with all these other facts about him that may or may not be true. But, I think he's the guy that is the right person to lead our country.
Maybe. Bill Davis, the late great premier of Ontario, said bland works. Okay, and he was one of the greatest premiers in Canadian history, won many elections. Maybe bland works for Mark Carney. We may also be in a different political era. Only time will tell. Thank you for your call. Back right after the news on the Friday Free-for-All. Talkback. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yes, it is the Friday Free-for-All Talkback Hour. So whatever's on your mind, we'll do our best to roll with it. Mel is in Red Deer. Hi there, Mel. What's on your mind today, Mel?
I've got a few things on my mind. There's still so many topics. But anyway, Trudeau is saying we're going to have import tariffs. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, that hurts Canadian citizens.
It will.
It adds to the price, and you just don't move money around like he plans to do. What they should do, in my opinion, is figure out a way to restrict imports. Don't put import tariffs on them, on Canadians. Where it's high enough cost of living right now. We don't need to pay more import tariffs to support,
Okay, but if you restrict the supply of something, that would.
It doesn't hurt.
That you restrict the supply, prices will go up. Will they not?
They will.
Anyway,
but I don't.
As a function of the market.
Bad as. That's a problem. Greed gets involved there, so
greed.
This supply-demand thing is something's got to change on that thing. But anyway, that was my opinion on that. And as far as the manufacturing industries that are using metal and aluminum to make products that they sell to the United States, the problem is they're buying the steel and aluminum from China and then making the products and sending them to the States, which is like, these import-export companies are the ones that Trump is going to go after. I've been listening to some different radio stations in the United States.
Okay.
And that's one of the things they don't like, is that secondary market where, Canadian companies bring stuff in from China and then make products out of it and sell it into the United States. They want to get rid of that.
Yes.
And but anyway, that's my two thoughts. And one thing they should ask Freeland and Carney is, okay, if they're going to get rid of the carbon tax, which I hope they do, but ask them what is going to replace it. Nobody's asking them what they're going to replace it with. because there's going to be a lot of federal jobs lost if the carbon tax is dropped, because they don't need those employees to handle that.
Well, it'd be about 500 is the latest figure we have, 461 employees administering the carbon tax.
Oh, so that's not too bad. So they can go on the dole for a while.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye. But look, I appreciate your call, Mel. Thanks for your call. Some politicians, just on the threat of tariffs, they're floating some things out there. We wanted to run this by you anyway, so let's get into it now. For example, Wab Kinew, the Manitoba premier, according to a quote that was in one of the papers this week, he said, quote, on bracing for impact for tariffs, quote, one of the things we've been doing is thinking back to some of the COVID era supports. But again, it's going to depend on what the American administration brings forward, end quote. This was ahead of the First Minister's meeting in Ottawa this week. He said that to a news reporter. COVID era supports. Now, I'm sure you remember some of those programs. Maybe some of you were helped by those programs, like the CERB, the $2,000 a month, CEBA loan program, wage subsidy program for businesses. So what if, okay, let me run this by you. Maybe you'll have an opinion on this today. What if the impact of tariffs by the Trump administration does tremendous harm to our economy? The estimate in Ontario, 500,000 job losses alone. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people across the country thrown out of work, maybe thousands, tens of thousands of businesses go under or at the risk of going under. Would you support bringing back programs like those programs that we had during the pandemic, like the CERB, like the wage subsidy program or a CEBA loan program? Now, here's another thing that kind of builds on this narrative, because Chrystia Freeland, who's going to announce on Sunday that she's a candidate for the Liberal leadership, has an opinion piece in the Toronto Star today where she says, get ready, America, because we're going to hit back at you hard if you put tariffs on us. Let me read a little bit here. Quote, Florida orange growers, Michigan dishwasher manufacturers, and Wisconsin dairy farmers, brace yourselves. Canada is America's largest export market, bigger than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. If pushed, our response will be the single largest trade blow to the U.S. economy. The single largest trade blow the U.S. economy has ever endured. She goes on, quote, if we are forced to retaliate, the $150 billion that Americans will pay to sell their goods in Canada is $150 billion we could use to help Canadians and businesses weather this essential fight. Just half of that revenue could provide nearly $2,700 in relief to every Canadian making less than $150,000 a year, end quote. Relief. And this number now, $2,700. Okay. And then Melanie Joly, the foreign affairs minister who was on CNN yesterday, said this to Tonda McCharles, who is with the Parliamentary Bureau of the Toronto Star, said this today. I believe David has the tape.
And how would the Canadian government use that kind of revenue?
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that when we impose tariffs, these are revenues that go to the Canadian government. We also know that, meanwhile, things become more costly across the country because of the fact that Americans are imposing tariffs on us. And so based on that, we want to make sure that ultimately, indeed, we use the revenues to support Canadians.
Use the revenues to support Canadians. In other words, the revenues from tariffs on American goods coming here. So look, I don't know how far advanced these discussions are. I think everything's kind of in limbo until Monday, maybe Tuesday. But there seems to be at least the makings of a plan. If Trump does this to Canada, what will we do to help Canadians? And you have Premier Wab Kinew saying we could bring back programs like the CERB or the wage subsidy. You have Freeland saying we could collect $150 billion and then give every Canadian making less than $150,000 a year $2,700 and still have $75 billion left over. And you have Joly saying Yeah, it sounds about right, but we haven't made any decisions yet, but we want to support Canadians. So assuming that they haven't made any decisions yet, what if the decision is, okay, counter tariffs, and whatever money we get from that, we do a program like CERB or CEBA or wage subsidy? What would you think of that? 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. It's Friday free for all. There's some lines available there. Whatever's on your mind, but if you want to weigh in on that one, I'd really be interested in hearing what you have to say. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Wide open on topics today. Eric is in Cole Harbor. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Rob. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Eric. Thank you. What's on your mind?
I just going to be very quick.
Okay.
I saw the fact and figure last night of the cost so far of the fires in Los Angeles. I think it's $250 billion.
Yeah.
So just imagine if they took $4 or $5 billion and made desalination plants and placed them strategically. How much of that could have been prevented? And secondly, the lack of planning by the city, by the people in the city that control the water, not having the reservoirs filled.
Okay.
Secondly, there was a guy, and I listened to him. He made a presentation. I apologize, I can't remember his name. He said the forest fires are going to continue until we do this. So I'm not going to get into that, but he explained a lot of stuff about CO2, photosynthesis and all that kind of stuff is really quite interesting. I suggest anybody watch that. Now, with the thing you talked about, the CERB and all that kind of stuff, that pretty much wrecked our economy.
Okay.
What people are forgetting, this whole thing started about illegal migration. And, nobody's talking about that. Trump wanted that cleaned up. And then everything else is mushroomed into this verbal war, we're Canadians, and they're going to hurt us, we're going to hurt them. I learned a long time ago in life, Rob, not to anticipate what's going to happen until it's happened. You should be ready, just in case. But however,
right, okay.
all he had to do is say, listen, we're going to clean up this, Donald. And there's no rhyme or reason for Trump to put on the 25% tariff. He was doing that because of the border, as far as I'm concerned. So that's all I got to say. I don't know if you have a comment back on any of that or not.
Well, I'm just very curious about what Steve Bannon said, and Steve Bannon basically went to prison for Donald Trump. One of many, right? Steve Bannon was there in the earliest days, and one of the MAGA disciples. He was the White House chief of staff. I believe we have a clip of Steve Bannon. That maybe this isn't about anything to do with the border or even military spending. It's about getting revenue from tariffs, and it's about this change in thinking that Americans are overtaxed, and they want to find a way to cut taxes, particularly not just for the donor class or what have you, the wealthy people, but for retirees and low income people, middle class Americans, and they think that they can offset income taxes if they start getting lots and lots of revenue in from tariffs. David, do you have that clip where Steve Bannon talks about that external revenue service? Sorry, Dave,
we have an internal revenue service that was set up basically in 1913, right? When we after the panic of 1906, 1907. One of the drivers I would love to see in the executive orders is set up an external revenue service, that we wouldn't just look at tariffs, but because tariffs paid for everything up until the early 20th century. But you wouldn't just look at tariffs, you look at everything about how you can charge fees, essentially, whether that's on investment, whether that's on other things of access to this country. This is America's behind the golden door. Okay, and this market's the most robust, lucrative market in the world, and we shouldn't just let people have access. We shouldn't let foreigners have access to this market and to the American people and American citizens for free. So I think I would love to see something that set up an external revenue service in Treasury that eventually took the burden off people on internal revenue services. There's no reason the American people, American corporations, even the donor class, has to pay for everything.
So that was Steve Bannon, the big MAGA guy. And, normally I wouldn't pay much attention to what he has to say. But then, like literally hours later, Donald Trump said on social media, I'm going to create an external revenue service that will, quote, begin charging those that make money off of us with trade. They will start paying finally their fair share. So is this about the border? Is this about the military? Or is it about we want to get more revenue from tariffs? And that's why we're going to punish Canada. Maybe as soon as next week. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. It's Friday Free for All. And this is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It is the Friday free-for-all Talkback today. In fact, Dennis in Calgary, you're up next. Dennis, what's on your mind today?
Hi there.
Hi, Dennis.
Yes. I would like.
Go ahead.
I was listening to your show yesterday, and
Yes.
you had a lot of people from the East phoning in and slagging our Iron Lady.
Okay.
Now, do they realize that a lot of people from Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, that come to Alberta, work for the winter, and go back home for the summer to ride motorcycle and enjoy life? Because there's two different standards for unemployment. One, in Western Canada, you have to be looking for a job. In Eastern Canada, you don't. You just go back and have a holiday. Now,
okay,
it's like, and not only that, they want to put
in all fairness, as somebody from Atlantic Canada originally, that's not really been my experience, is that people would go out and say, work in northern Alberta, and then come home and just go on vacation all summer. Like that's not my experience. I've had people in my own family who have done this, who do the, whatever it is. What is the rotation now? Like 3 weeks in, 2 weeks out, whatever. I've known lots of people who have done that and do it all year round. It's tough. It's tough to go out there and be away from your family and be away from your kids. And the work is really hard, but the money is so good you can't turn it down, so.
This is true. But I worked in Cape Breton for 4 months, and I met several people out there that's what they did.
Right.
They come to Alberta, they worked for the winter, and went home and enjoyed the summer. Now, this is to me, is they'd be slicing their own throat if they don't. But another thing is, the federal government doesn't even know where gas and oil is. They want to kill it until such time as there's money involved. And then they know where our gas and oil is. And
well, that's a point that Premier Smith is trying to drive home.
Exactly.
Where were you when? Where were you when we were trying to do Northern Gateway? Where were you when we were trying to do Energy East? You've basically landlocked us to the point where we only have one customer to sell it to.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're captive to the Americans, and now you want to use this as leverage. It's not fair.
Yeah. But why would they not put something on the hydro that Quebec is sending out or the car parts that Ontario is sending out? Because, that would hurt their economy. And we need their votes is exactly what the Liberal government is thinking. So, it's double standard all the way around.
Well, I know that, this narrative has always been out there. Maybe there's something to it. There are more seats in the city of Toronto than there are in the entire province of Alberta, sir.
Yep. And they're
just in the city of Toronto.
Yeah.
And I'm talking the old city of Toronto, like the 416 area code before you even get started with 905.
Yeah. But it's also like the Maritimes, according to population, they have more seats per population than what Alberta or Saskatchewan have. It's crazy.
Okay.
And
right.
The people down east, I was doing training for a company, and we had people from Quebec come to, and they were under the impression that Quebec was sponsoring Western Canada until we showed them the equalization payments and how, for example, this year, $6 billion went to Quebec.
This year it's going to be $13.5 billion actually for this year.
Yeah. And where does that come from? Most of it from oil and gas. So and they've actually got the resources.
Well, the federal government would say it comes from the federal government. It's funding from the federal government to deal with what it calls gaps in fiscal capacity. The question has always been: would the federal government have its own fiscal capacity to give Quebec $13.5 billion without the natural resources wealth of the West? Of course. Okay, I thank you for your call, Dennis, on the Friday Free for All. 1 hour left. Full hour to hear from you right after the news. The latest breaking news coming up next on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
What do you want to talk about? It's the Friday free-for-all, so whatever it happens to be, you take the lead. It's our final hour of the week around here. You heard the number there, 1-833-668-2577. Right to the phones. Keith in Ottawa up first here. Keith.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
I think the answer is in the Washington Post, believe it or not. They have an editorial in the opinion, and they're stating there's another way to fight the trade war. They realize how expensive this is going to be for Americans, but they're putting out an example of what China did when Trump was first in power. China, instead of imposing tariffs on the U.S., it lowered the tariffs on imports from other countries, so that they were able to benefit from cheaper goods. And, of course, American exporters would be at a great disadvantage. If all the countries that are facing these tariffs were to do this, it would certainly play a fact. I know our leaders are together in Canada, but they should almost be meeting with leaders from other countries that have the same problem. I'm sure they could come to grips with a common solution, and instead of the United States dividing and defeating them individually, they would have a larger group to be concerned with, and would have more an effect on the U.S. economy. Now, if we were to reduce any tariffs on Chinese goods, we'd certainly get a lot of cheaper items. It'd be better for the consumer, and it would hurt. And of course, the United States doesn't want the Chinese economy to get stronger. But if Trump is playing hardball like this, then we've got to look at some of the alternatives, right?
Okay. All right. Thank you for your call, Keith. All right. An interesting point. Dylan in Cambridge up next. Dylan, go ahead.
Hey, Rob. I got a couple ideas here. First, anybody who calls in and says that redoing CERB is a good idea, I want you to reach through the phone and smack them in the face.
Okay. Why is that?
Millions of people who weren't making an income, getting free money from the government, causing massive billions of dollars in debt and hyperinflation. It's a program that obviously didn't work during the pandemic and obviously won't work for this. Don't waste the money and don't drive up the inflation with another CERB. It's craziness. If it come to the point where thousands of people were getting laid off and out of work and couldn't afford stuff, then we already have the systems in place. Double the unemployment amount and make it available for twice as long. Then the people that were actually working will be covered. Lower income tax for the people that are still working.
Okay.
There's two great ideas to keep money flowing to the people who are already making money.
Right.
The thought that we're going to collect $150 billion in tariffs from the U.S. is also laughable. There's not a snowball's chance that that's going to happen. So it's all dream world anyways. So that's the CERB issue. The next issue with these tariffs, obviously, that Dennis from out west, the Albertans feel like they've paid their share and we shouldn't be picking on them and their oil. And I kind of get it. But the oil is our biggest chip against these tariffs. if we're not willing to sanction the oil going to the States, then what we should have done years ago and what we should threaten to do now, and maybe not even just threaten, actually do it, is start building, tell Donald Trump, we're building pipelines west, we're building pipelines east, and we're going to start selling oil elsewhere. It's not a mistake or a happenstance that 97% of our oil goes to the U.S. That happened because of U.S. influence. So let's make it available to others around the world so they're not our only customer. And just the threat of that alone is going to scare them enough not to jam these tariffs on us, because they need the oil. They can say whatever they want. 3 million barrels of oil a day isn't going to be replaced anywhere else by anyone else.
Okay. I don't know if I fully buy into everything you're selling. You do, you make some pretty good points, but what Danielle Smith is saying, we wanted to sell Eastern Canada our oil, and we wanted to get our oil to British Columbia and then off to other markets. And you said no. You said no in the East, and you said no in the West. And you put us in this position for any number of reasons, whether it's, eco-radicalism or whatever. You sided with Quebec nationalists. Not really. You sided with the environmental movement. You sided with First Nations leadership, but of course, only the First Nations leaders that shared in your opposition, because a lot of First Nations weren't opposed to pipeline projects. And in Quebec, they were dancing and cheering and celebrating the demise of the Energy East pipeline, and the same with the Northern Gateway pipeline that would have gone from northern Alberta down into Kitimat. And it was the Trudeau government that killed that with its anti-tanker bill and its
government can revive it.
Well, maybe. We shall see. We shall see. And Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Trudeau, can we play the clip? Thank you for your call. Let's play the clip. Mr. Trudeau and what he said yesterday. He was in Windsor yesterday and said we've been so good to Alberta that we did the Trans Mountain Pipeline for Alberta. Roll the tape on that, David.
I would actually like to point out to Danielle Smith, the Canadians know the importance of standing up for each other. That's why Canadian taxpayers bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX, to be able to get Albertan oil to new markets. That was an investment that all Canadians made, that the Alberta government is making billions of dollars off of, because in what was a very difficult decision, the federal government, we made the decision to purchase and build and complete that pipeline. That's an example of all Canadians standing up for Alberta and getting it done. So yes, premiers should be advocating for their own industries, their own country,
right. Okay,
their
that's
own
that's enough, David. Yeah, he never says why the government had to nationalize the project in the first place. There was a private company, Kinder Morgan, that was trying to build that pipeline, which was, I would remind people, it was the twinning of a pipeline. There was a pipeline already there operating safely for decades. They were putting another pipeline right next to the old pipeline. It took 6 years from the time the application was first put in to the time it was approved by the federal government. 6 years under a conservative government. And then the Liberals came to power, all sorts of opposition from within the Liberal caucus, and the NDP government out in British Columbia, of course, opposed to it, even though in BC they love to mine for coal. And LNG is A-OK for British Columbia. They just don't like pipelines from Alberta, so they were sticks in the mud. And some, but certainly not all, First Nations were opposed. A lot of First Nations were in favor of it. All kinds of fights in courts. And Kinder Morgan said, we're out of here. And they sold it to the government for $4.5 billion. And then the government took it over, and by the time it was all said and done, it was years behind schedule, and it cost $34 billion or $34 million per kilometer. And yet Mr. Trudeau portrays this as a great gift from the Canadian taxpayers to the people of Alberta. $34 billion for one pipeline, for 1,000 kilometers of pipeline that was put down right next to a pipeline that had already been there. Crazy. Where did that money go? Start digging into that. This is News Radio.
Have Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Friday free for all. Aaron is in Vancouver. Thanks for waiting, Aaron. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I'd like to talk about Danielle Smith today. I can't believe that people are calling her a traitor. They should be calling her a patriot.
Okay,
why? Because what she's doing is she's standing up to the East. She's standing up to even our own government here in BC, saying, let's get some more pipelines built. She's going to generate revenue for decades. And if she plays her cards right, she could get this done, no problem.
Okay. There's also this. What if she's right? What if she's right and everybody else is wrong? Okay. I read a quote from the Calgary Herald yesterday about this idea of export taxes, because this is the bone of contention for Premier Smith in Alberta. She doesn't want export taxes that would go to Ottawa. Okay, because she would see that as an encroachment on the ownership of natural resources by the provinces. Fen Hampson, international affairs professor, Carleton University. Okay, an Eastern Canadian academic, hardly a hotbed of hardcore right-wing extremism. Quote, using the hockey analogy, why score a set of goals on your own team? It is quite frankly the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The dumbest thing I ever heard would be imposing an export tax on our energy, whether that's oil and gas from Alberta or electricity from Ontario and Quebec. And he says, if Trump puts the tariff on it, let the Americans scream about it, because they're the ones who are going to see it in the pocketbook. Quote, let them do the yelling for us, making the situation worse by sending a message that we're ready to jeopardize security of supply of energy. It would be totally the wrong message to send.
Yeah.
It was in the paper this week.
Yeah, I agree with
Guy's
that.
Guy's an expert. He is an expert in Canada-U.S. relations.
But she could also put the government of BC and the government of Quebec on the line and say, hey, listen, get these pipelines built. Let's diversify our exports.
Right.
Sell it at market rate. Renegotiate our NAFTA or CUSMA, whatever it is. And then once we renegotiate CUSMA, they're not getting the deal down south that they were getting, because we can sell it at a higher cost to somebody else.
Yeah, very good point that you make. Very good point that you make, Aaron. Yeah, thank you for calling. Let's go to Tom in Cambridge. Tom, up next in Cambridge. Hi there, Tom.
I don't know if you've heard this, but there's some stuff floating out there that Mr. Doug Ford is positioning himself to become, possibly after not this election, but maybe the next election, to become the conservative leader, the federal conservative leader.
Well, I don't think that job is going to be open
anytime
soon.
Well, let's just say that Mr. Poilievre does not win a majority, but a minority government.
Right. And is there any indication that that's going to happen?
Well, we don't know, do we? There's a possibility. Anything's possible. But if it becomes down to a minority government and we lose this, let's say, just for a sake, it doesn't matter who the next leader of the Liberals are in, but if he loses the next election and then the Liberals or whoever government forms a minority government, don't you think that his leadership would come into question?
Oh, sure. Conservatives love to do in their own leaders. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. And if he blows this election, I mean, that would be a squanderance of epic proportions. Now, let me ask, how is Doug Ford's French?
Well,
some people wonder when it comes to Doug Ford, how is his English, let alone his French?
Sure, but maybe Doug is doing what Pierre Paul is, and he's taking some lessons. He's getting some some French lessons on the side.
Yeah, Doug Ford should take some conservative lessons. That's what Doug Ford needs to do.
Well, Rob, this is the other side, is that the Conservative Party of today was part of the Reform Party. And there was the remaining Conservatives jumped ship to go to the Alliance. And Mr. Poilievre was a reformist. He was selling Reform membership for Jason Kenney. So They mostly, it was the Western people who formed the party thinking they could defeat the Liberals and win.
Well, it's a national party now, and it was certainly a national force under Stephen Harper that had members of Parliament from coast to coast, sir.
Yes, no, I'm not.
It won seats in Atlantic Canada. It won. Didn't win many seats in Quebec. I think in the first time around, it was like something like 14 seats in Quebec or something. Won a majority government without winning many seats in Quebec. But I mean, they were winning seats in the GTA, and certainly they were doing very well in Western Canada. Okay.
Yeah. No, I just thought, I just found it very interesting to read that.
What if? Okay, thank you, Tom. Good to hear from you. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback Friday, free for all Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Margaret in Drumheller up next on the Friday Free for All. Margaret, what do you want to talk about, Margaret?
Oh, hi. I just wanted to hear some discussion of the WEF and the connection to the politicians, because I feel it's a very dangerous philosophy, and yet I see the people running to be the leader of the Liberal Party, and others, of course, but those are the ones that I'm most concerned about now. But I'm wondering if people know exactly what the philosophy is of this WEF. And it's an elite, and their goal is world control, world domination, and they say the way of the future is we all will own nothing and we'll all be happy. Of course, excluding the elite, which will govern. So I haven't heard a lot of discussion on it, and I'm wondering how familiar people are with this and how dangerous they feel it is to have our political leaders involved in such a thing. That's my only comment. I hope to hear more about it.
So this is the organization that has the annual Gab Fest in Davos, right?
Yes, it is, yeah.
They do the Davos thing. Yeah, Stephen Harper used to go to Davos all the time. That.
I think it has developed, and it was only not recently, but I'm talking about a couple of years ago when I investigated it and found out what Klaus Schwab has said is the way of the future, he said. People have to investigate it, but they'll see that he quoted, "We'll all own nothing, but we'll all be happy." And the thing is, of course, they're excluding the ruling elite. Somebody has to govern, and it certainly isn't going to be the workers.
You've thrown it out there as a topic, and people can do their own investigations, and they can come to their own conclusions. Margaret, thank you for your call. David in Sylvan Lake up next. Go ahead, David.
Yes, in regard to the lady just called, I'm familiar with the WEF, and I agree with her. We need to be concerned. That's not why I called initially. I called, with the mess that Trudeau has left the Liberal leadership party in. I'm glad he's gone. I'll be honest, I wouldn't vote for Freeland either, because I think she was nothing but a stool pigeon of his. I heard her read so many statements that Mr. Trudeau had made earlier, basically word for word. And if she was really against what he was doing, which at the end it seems that's her thinking, why did she hang on and pretend that she was part of it? Now, in regards to...
because she was going to be demoted, I guess, She was the finance minister, and he was going to take that job away from her and give it to somebody else and give her a job with no staff and no budget.
Well, that's true, right. But I think she had
knifed him on the way out the door.
He would have earlier said, look, this is what's really going on, and I'm being kind of told what to say. Now, in regards to Mr. Carney and getting rid of the carbon tax, he made the statement, I believe, that I heard him say, that if we get rid of the carbon tax, what are we going to do to replace it? I will give him an idea that I've never heard him talk about, and very few people do, is cut your expenses. Sure, you might lose $50 billion a year in carbon tax income, but look at the cost overruns that our governments have put up with. We look at Phoenix pays.
Well, to me, it's just, we're running out of time. To me, it's just remarkable that Mr. Carney, who's been advocating for the carbon tax for many, many years and complaining that it wasn't high enough, is now saying we don't need it.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Home stretch now on the Friday free-for-all Talkback hour. Still time to fit you in, though, at 1-833-668-2577. Steve up next in Calgary. Hi, Steve.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's on your mind?
I was just calling in about that second CERB that you talked about there earlier. I wondered during COVID why they didn't do something similar to what they did with like first-time home buyers thing, where people could take so much out of their RSPs tax-free, and then as long as it was paid back in a certain amount of time, it kind of puts the onus on those people to spend that money more responsibly and only take the money they needed. I thought the CERB it left a lot of opportunity for people to take advantage of it, which is what turned what happened.
Yeah, even people at the Canada Revenue Agency took advantage of it. Like hundreds of people were fired.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I often wondered if they do it again, they do something where they do make it where it's more onus on the people to spend money responsibly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if CERB is coming back or not. I just found it curious that Wab Kinew, before he went into the First Minister's meeting, said it was one of the things that the premiers were talking about with the Prime Minister. Quote, one of the things we've been doing is thinking back to some of the COVID era supports. And you remember, they all had those 4-letter names, right? CERB and CEBA and CEWS, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program for businesses. I just wonder, are these the kind of programs they're thinking about? Because they were big money programs.
Oh, huge. Like that small business loan where they forgive $10,000 on a $40,000 loan. Like that's almost encouraging people to apply for it even if they don't need it, Just,
right.
Hey.
Right. Yeah.
Right on.
Okay.
Well, thanks for taking my call.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Anytime. Peter in Langley, British Columbia. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, Peter. Thank you.
I've got a comment, and then I'd like to ask you a question. This is about Daniel Smith. I believe she is 100% wrong, and I'm aware of the article that you quoted, but she's 100% wrong. First up, Alberta got ripped off. That's for sure. Canada not allowing the East Coast and the West Coast pipelines to be built. That was definitely a hammer against Alberta. But here's the problem. Is that we have to have a unified approach to the American attack. That's what I'm going to call it. And if you allow the Americans to pick and choose what they're going to let through, then you've defeated the whole purpose of your retaliation. So, the Americans decide, okay, well, oil and gas is going to hurt us too much, so we're going to allow that through. So how are they supposed to feel the pain that we're going to be feeling? So, I think the premiers so far, they've really blown this. You've had, I don't know how many premiers trying to get down there and talk to Trump, pay fealty, and Daniel Smith wants to even attend his inauguration. I mean, you have, America is our friend, but you have Trump, who's clearly acting as an enemy. So you got to go down to, see the inauguration of your enemy, basically. And I don't think that any Canadian should be down there attending his inauguration. Gump's got to be laughing his butt off at all this. So my question to you is, what happens if the Americans decide that energy is a national security threat at this point, which I think they probably already have?
I don't know. Trump is on the record saying we don't need their energy. And maybe he sells it to Americans because, he can be very convincing, especially to his base, that we really don't need the Canadians and their energy. And you may feel some short-term pain, but what we're going to do is we're going to make America the world's number one superpower. And we're going to, make America, we're going to fortify America so we don't rely on any country.
Yes.
Let alone, we used to rely on the Middle East. We don't need to rely on the Middle East, and we're not going to rely on Canada anymore. I don't know if that's what's going to happen.
So how about if that, I suspect that Michigan, is it Michigan, the governor that's whining about the Line 5 thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. If she would have phoned up Trump and uttered national security threat, I could see the Americans deciding that, okay, we're going to extend, like the Permian Express pipeline or whatever, right up to Line 5, tie it into the main line going through Ontario and Quebec, and shut off Line 5, and now Ontario and Quebec are going to be buying their oil from the Permian Basin. I can see that kind of thing happening where the United States just say, because we've seen it in the Second World War, right? When the Americans got into the war, look at what happened to production. Nose down, and their production was just phenomenal. And it's the same thing that's going to happen right now. They're going to borrow, endless borrowing, but they're going to be building infrastructure, and they're going to be taking care of themselves. That's what I think. I think Canada.
Look, I really appreciate your call. I mean, it could take any number of scenarios, of course, Peter. And I don't know how it's all going to unfold. I don't know if anybody knows how it's all going to unfold. I know the big thing for Premier Smith is the very idea of an export tax on Alberta and oil and gas to the United States. It will always, always, always be a non-starter for this particular premier. An export tax collected by Ottawa, with the money going to Ottawa and spent by Ottawa. It's just not on, because that was a key component of the National Energy Program of 1980 from the first Trudeau government. And as well as I do that they've not forgotten, and they've not forgiven what happened to Alberta and Alberta's economy with the National Energy Program. And I think Premier Smith is feeling export tax on our oil and gas. Give them an inch, those liberals in Ottawa, they'll take a mile. And we are not going to surrender authority and sovereignty, not 1 inch, to a government in Ottawa. The energy wealth in Alberta belongs to Alberta. Full stop. And it's not going to happen on her watch. She issued a statement today on social media, again, to that effect. I'm Rob Snow. It's Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Joe in Port Elgin on the Friday Free for All Talkback Hour. What do you want to talk about?
The Liberals. Lipstick on a pig. That's what they're doing right now.
All right.
They got their shiny new toy, Mark Carney.
Yeah.
And now the Liberals have something that they can get behind and vote for again. Because when you're a Liberal voter, ignorance is bliss, and you have a total lack of long-term memory. I don't trust Liberal voters as far as I can throw them. In fact, if you're not on the take, then you have the IQ of a driveway. That's what I think of Liberal voters. Because they gave us Trudeau for the last decade. So thank you, Liberal voters. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Look where we are now.
Right.
Yeah. So here comes Mark Carney, and it doesn't matter how much lipstick you put on the pig, it's still a pig. And it's still the same policies that are bankrupting Canadians and making life unaffordable in Canada, and third world health care, and every other wrong thing you can think of that's going on in our country as Trump is trying to take over. So now we got Mark Carney, the shiny new toy. And is he not the architect of the carbon tax? Did he not put the architecture?
Oh, big promoter of it. Big promoter of it. Yeah.
So way to go, Liberal voters. You have another shot at it. And let's hope that you have a long-term functioning memory and not short-term ignorance bliss, because you got a shiny new toy to vote for. That's my little rant for this week, Rob, and I don't trust Canadian voters as far as I can throw them.
All right, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, Mark Carney. I was curious to see the politician Mark Carney in action yesterday. I mean, me and David, we covered Ottawa news for a long time. We were based out of Ottawa for years. And, Mark Carney, fixture in the Ottawa scene for a long time, no stranger to us, governor of the Bank of Canada during the financial crisis of 2008. Stephen Harper was prime minister, of course, at that time. And Jim Flaherty, the late Jim Flaherty, was the finance minister. And look, he's been rumored to have political ambitions for years. The idea that one day he would try and seek political office, no secret. So yesterday I was curious to see Mark Carney, the politician. David, I don't know about you. I thought the event in Edmonton was a train wreck. I just thought it was a train wreck.
I think to be as balanced as possible, the word I would use is a flop. It was a flop. If you're a critic of Mr. Carney's, and if you have no intention of voting for him, a train wreck would be appropriate. I think train wreck is definitely accurate also.
His speech was dull. His speech was boring. No energy. French that was passable. People say he's fluent. I wouldn't say that. He could pass a French test to join the public service, but I would say he needs some work. The way things are going right now, I don't even think the Liberal Party is going to have a French language debate for this leadership. But if he finds himself, and he quite likely will, in a federal election campaign, he'll be hard pressed to keep up with Blanchette and Polyev. And you know what? Jagmeet Singh's French is not that bad either. But I thought it was a weird event. Like, the guy who introduced him in Edmonton isn't even from Edmonton. From Calgary, the Liberal MP George Chahal, best known as the Porch Pirate MP. That's what he's known for. I'm sorry. That's his claim to fame as a member of parliament, because he was caught on video stealing his opponent's flyers from someone's mailbox and then replacing those flyers with his own flyers. It's not in dispute. The guy paid a $500 fine. Okay. But nevertheless, the good people in Calgary Skyview elected this guy, the Porch Pirate, and he introduced Mark Carney at this event. We have some tape. This is so inspiring. This is part of what he said.
As you know, this land we called Canada is facing so many threats right now. We have a stagnant economy. Our wages feel like they are frozen, but costs keep escalating. We face a fractured political divide that has pitted Canadians versus Canadian.
That's a hell of a sales pitch, isn't it, Dave? Isn't that a great sales pitch? Yeah. We have a stagnant economy. Wages aren't going up. The cost of living is going up, and Canadians are fighting with other Canadians. And we've been the government for the last 9 years. Please vote for us. It's like, okay, bud, odd sales pitch there. Then Carney takes to the podium, and he basically says all the same stuff, only it takes him longer to say it. Roll the tape there.
Those good old times, my friends, are over. Our times are anything but ordinary. The system, it's not working as it should. And it's not working as it could. People are anxious. No wonder. Too many are falling behind. Too many young people can't afford a home. Too many people can't find a doctor.
Yeah, that's the pitch. The good times are over.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for that.
Thanks. Yeah. Right. People are falling behind. Young people can't find homes, and people can't find a family doctor. We are the Liberals who have governed you for 9 years. Please vote for me. Seriously. Get a new communications team. And the story today is hilarious. He needs to get a new logo now. The logo for his campaign was, he ripped it off from a collections agency in Alberta called Met Credit, and they called Mark Carney out on Twitter for stealing their logo, and now they've issued like a cease and desist order. Don't use our logo, dude. Not a great first day. Maybe it was the second day. Maybe Monday was his first day when he was on the Jon Stewart Daily Show. I don't know. Mark Carney. Okay, good luck to him. He's probably going to win the thing, I think.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Just because the ballot is so shallow.
Yeah, what a bad week for this Liberal leadership race. Like that event yesterday, Christy Clark blows up her campaign before she even declares her candidacy. It's crazy. All right, we have to stop here. Be right back. Take a few more calls and then wind things down. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Larry in Calgary. You're on the air, Larry. What do you want to talk
Rob,
about?
How are you?
I'm good, Larry. What's up?
Just had one point. I think the Liberals, and by extension the Governor General, showed real contempt for Canada by suspending Parliament while we've got the new administration coming in from the States. There's no one in Parliament now to even pick up the phone and talk to them, right? I mean, that's really bad for us.
Okay.
The second thing I was going to say was that when Parliament does finally resume, Singh is going to support them. He's going to go, oh.
You think so?
Now, for sure. Now isn't the time to fight an election. We've got to give Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland a chance to negotiate for Canada, and he'll keep it going until October. If we go to an election, he's out and he's got no power. So he's going to for sure support them until November, which is really unfortunate.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see if that's true. I mean, people have reached out to the New Democrats to say, has your position changed? And they keep saying no. But when you read maybe people are reading too much into this. When you actually read the statement that was issued by Jagmeet Singh, it said, "We will defeat the government during the next sitting of Parliament, the next sitting of the House of Commons, not at the earliest opportunity, which could come, just a few days later, but that all depends on how long is Parliament going to sit."
Yeah, that could be September.
Is it going to be at the beginning of the sitting, at the end of the sitting, And it's not like they're going to sit through the summer. They'll want the summer vacation just like everybody else, right?
Yeah, his power evaporates with an election. So maybe. Yep. Okay, well, great show, Rob. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, good to hear from you today. Look, it was so very interesting to take all of your calls. I mean, I told you when we first came back in early January, it was like 2 weeks ago now, that the year 2025 was going to get off to a rip-roaring start. And I mean, look at everything that has happened in just the last 2 weeks. I mean, we left with the tariff threat, and we came back, and it was all of this stuff about Trump and the 51st state and using economic force. And then, Mr. Trudeau resigning and the prorogation of Parliament, and all the speculation about who is in and who is out of the race. And now that's starting to take shape. Mark Carney in Edmonton yesterday, Chrystia Freeland with an opinion piece in the Toronto Star today, and then launching her candidacy on Sunday will be the official announcement from Chrystia Freeland, and she'll be in, and Freeland and Carney, who are very close. He's godfather to one of her children, after all. They're the front runners in this thing. Won't it be interesting to see those two debate each other? And then, of course, on Monday, when we're back, I mean, who knows what's going to happen after Donald Trump is sworn in at noon Eastern time. And the second term begins for Donald Trump as president of the United States, and what will that mean for Canada? So we'll have a lot to talk about next week when we're back. The latest breaking news is coming up next. Here with David Smith, I'm Rob Snow.